The 18 Strong Podcast, episode number 151 with Trillium Rose.
So essentially, the less that's moving, the better when you're trying to learn something new.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzero.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast this week. I'm your host, Jeff Pellizzero, and it's our mission to bring you in touch with some of the greatest golf coaches, golf instructors, fitness professionals, golfers themselves, whatever it is in the world of golf, to help you get stronger both on and off the course. And this week, we've got a special guest, a return on the show. We have Trillium Rose, who's the Director of Instruction at Woodmont Country Club in Maryland. Woodmont is the home to the USGA sectional qualifying for the last 30 years and is the site for the 2019 U.S. Women's Amateur Championship. So Trillium has over 15 years of experience in the world of teaching and instruction and has worked with thousands of students and has coached thousands of hours with competitive juniors, some of the dignitaries in Washington, and plenty of A-listers in that area. And she also has a master's degree in motor learning and control from Columbia University. So Trillium has such vast knowledge and insights into how we learn, how we should practice, how we can take the practice that we're doing and how that can relate to what we're doing on the course. And so utilizing her scientific background, she's able to give us better and more efficient instruction, we'll say. And obviously it's working because she won the Mid-Atlantic PGA Teacher of the Year this past year. So today what we're going to talk about is basically how do you fast track your improvement? How do you get better quicker, especially for the newer golfers or the golfers that maybe don't get to play all that often, didn't grow up playing very competitively? How do you then kind of bridge that gap of going from, relatively new or not being able to play a whole lot to, making the best strides and making sure that you're not ingraining or learning the wrong things? So Trillium has a thesis that, what you do in the first stages of your learning can set the trajectory of how quickly you become proficient at whatever it is you're doing. So by capitalizing on just a few simple things at a certain time and working in stages, you can actually build up to a higher, more complex movement in a much shorter period of time. And obviously that's very specific and perfect for the golf swing. So in this episode, we're going to dive in deep into, basically some of the mistakes that she sees many individuals making. She kind of breaks them up into three different individual groups, and you might relate to one of the three groups, you might relate to all three of the groups, and then we're just going to talk about some simple solutions and basically what are the three things that she really emphasizes working on, understanding, and practicing in order to move much quicker in the learning process, to get from, going and playing and practicing and making sure that it's efficient and that you're ingraining good things. Because again, if you're starting to ingrain the wrong things or you dive down the wrong little rabbit trail of instruction, you might be ingraining the wrong things. So Trillium really kind of dives in deep and helps us understand that. So I'm very excited to bring her back on the show. But before we jump into the conversation here with Trillium, let's give a quick thanks to our sponsor, the PGA Tour mobile app, which, as you have probably heard on this show, is one of my favorite apps in the App Store. It just helps me keep up to date with what's going on in the tour events. You can keep track of their scores. You can see where guys are hitting shots. You can catch live video. You can pretty much get all of it. You can get PGA Tour radio and listen to some of the live things going on there. It's also been great for me recently. I've had a couple guys that were playing in some web.com events, and so when that's not televised, which obviously it's not very often, it's great to be able to keep up to date with what's going on with their scores. So if you haven't checked out the PGA Tour mobile app, by all means go over to whatever your preferred app store is, iTunes, whether you're in an Android, BlackBerry, whatever it is, you can find the PGA Tour mobile app for your device. So definitely check that out. All right, let's get into our conversation with motor learning and control expert Trillium Rose. Trillium, welcome back to the 18 Strong Podcast. I'm so excited to have you back on and talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Absolutely. I have to say that our last episode, when you were on, which was episode number 90, this is episode number 151 now, we talked a lot about, practice and just kind of sinking our teeth into how people can get better at what they're trying to do when they go out and practice, or ways to kind of gamify their practice. And so I think we're going to add on to a lot of that and really kind of break down and boil down some things that you found in your teaching. I know you've been doing a lot of writing, and you said that you've been working on your book quite a bit. You had your book written, but you've kind of revamped it. Give us a little story behind that.
Oh, geez. Yeah, this is one of these stories where it's like a face palm story.
I got a couple of those.
If you don't fail, how are you going to grow, right? So I just keep looking at it that way. But after going through so much research for about 2 years, or what I mean with research is it's literally peer-reviewed journal articles that are really scientific. I think after spending like 2 years just knee deep in all this stuff, I definitely wanted to try to pull together like some themes and some concepts that we as instructors and as golfers, as players, could kind of glean and learn. And so I worked with a PhD. He actually had started the manuscript, and he had really put together something pretty comprehensive. And it needed kind of a little bit more of a reader-friendly edit. Mm-hmm. Turned out it needed a lot of that, and so I worked on it, and I realized, this, and I, had a friend who's an editor, and I think take a look, and it turned out the audience was like 50 people. It's just still a little academic, a little heavy, and a little hard to translate. So I realized, okay, this is doable, but it's going to take a lot of time. So I kind of went back to the drawing board and said, what can I do that's really practical? What can I write that's practical for people that can that can actually help them? That's totally in line with what I've been working on, which is, how do you get people better in a short amount of time? Like, how can you be more efficient about your time? How can you be smart about your improvement so that you're leapfrogging over these little mistakes? And people just don't have time anymore, and there's a ton of information. Like, how do you filter it, and how do you use it to your advantage? So I'm still on that topic, and here I am. So my new book is basically that. It's like backtracking your improvement, and the smart way to pick up golf. What's the smart way? And the smart way, using scientific processes that are all sort of agreed upon in the scientific community. And then from an instructor standpoint, 15 years of practical experience in the trenches. With people like normal golfers, what are the drills that really actually work, and what are the skills that you need, and let's get to some hacks that you can do that are going to work right now. So that's what I'm on to, and the book will be an easy read, and it'll be more like a quick guide, as opposed to kind of a heady, long, lengthy novel.
Well, everyone loves hacks these days, and you're right, we're so busy, we've got so much going on, and there is so much information that having something that's easier to comprehend and read and practically apply I think is so much more valuable than a big, research-driven reference book. So I applaud you for taking the steps back and really looking at that, because I think that's what the audience really wants these days. Now, is it near completion? How far out are we from seeing this and holding it in our hands?
I'd say we're in skeleton phase, and I'm some of the parts have been fleshed out, and some need some more fleshing out. So, probably at least a month.
A month? I was thinking, when you said skeleton phase, I was thinking, several months to a year down the road, but a month, awesome. I know, because I know that process can be long and can dwindle on for a little while. So we're getting a little inside peek at what's going on with the book. Does it have a title yet?
A couple of working titles, and I have Ron Kaspersky from Golf Digest who's agreed to partner up with me and do this. So I think he has a pretty good insight into kind of what the general golfer is ready to digest and how they want to digest it. And so I feel confident that between the two of us, we can kind of put this all together, relatively quickly.
Oh yeah, Ron's the man behind so many of those books out there that we've all read and written. So awesome, congratulations. Well, let's kind of dive into what's obviously the premise is how to fast track your improvement and how to go from just learning or whatever phase you're in. What's kind of the big thesis of the book here?
Well, so the audience would be, or I guess the learner, the ideal learner would be someone who's kind of in the early stages of picking something up. So let's say someone, you have golf clubs, you've been to the driving range, generally how to swing, but maybe there's still a lot of stuff you need to learn. Or this could be, for your spouse, your significant other, or your friend, or your mom, or your dad, or something. So it's basically those early stages of learning, they really set the trajectory of how quickly that you can piece it all together and become a golfer. And I think that's really it. It's what are you doing early on? And so then by capitalizing on just one thing at a time, building on it, a few specifics, you learn the concepts, work in stages, and then eventually a complex skill, evolves without even you really thinking about it. And I think a lot of people get distracted. A lot of people figure that they need to do too much too soon. And, so I kind of really hash that stuff out, and I would love to just go through some of that with you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think there are people that waste time in the early stages and they don't realize they're wasting time. So I've kind of chunked people into three different groups. Now, someone could be a member of two of these problematic approaches, or maybe they have their own problematic issue. But from what I've seen, there are three types of people, and the first one is the thinker. So this could be someone who, there's a lot of these, they're self-diagnosing what their issues are. So someone who plays golf and they have really big ups and downs, or maybe they're not even piecing golf together just yet, but there's this type of person, and they're like, I can figure this all out. But somewhere along the line, then they're barking up the wrong tree in terms of what they need to do. So they think, okay, I'm gonna watch this guy on YouTube. He's really entertaining and he's hitting shots that I think are cool, and I'm going to start doing that. And that could work, but it might not work. And then the next day you've got a book that's really interesting. You're reading a book, and then your friend says something, the guy in the range says something. So you end up self-diagnosing, and that can be good, but it could also be very misleading. And when someone's out there, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I'm sure it happens in other sports, when you've got someone who's really starting to just do it on their own and start messing around with other things, maybe there's some pivotal concepts that they totally get wrong.
Yeah.
Or they start grooving something that's completely ineffective kind of in the long run. Like, yeah, they might be making contact, but really their swings like put together with duct tape and wax.
Do you find that this is the kind of person that typically will, they'll start to read an article, or they'll be kind of scouring the internet, and they might start to go down one path, watching one instructor's videos, and then they pick up a tip from another person. They're like, oh, that I like that, and they start to go, and then all of a sudden they've got kind of 5 different approaches from 5 different articles or different videos, and they start to kind of just branch out in all these different directions. That's kind of what I've seen. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so it could be someone who says, well, I've taken lessons from, the 5 different pros, and I flew here and I flew there. And, on one side of it, you commend the person for putting the effort out. Mm-hmm. You say, wow, you've really tried to pull yourself up from the bootstraps and do this, and you're really making a good college try. But, you need one consistent person. This is sort of a morbid example, but Jim Henson, who died of pneumonia, he died because he was on a road trip from the south to the north. He had just stopped in with different doctors along the way. There was no consistency. And so his symptoms were kind of evolving and changing, and he had little bits of of help, but there is not one captain of the ship who said, hey, this is the direction we're going in. This is how we're going to do it. And these are the stages we're going to go through. Right? And I think that's a dangerous place to go with your game. Not as dangerous as getting pneumonia and dying, but, you know, in terms of getting better faster, this is critical.
Yeah, and you mentioned possibly grooving, you know, say you even do start to kind of go down one path, but that you could possibly be grooving the wrong path and creating the wrong associations and patterns and things like that. How do we kind of start to combat that? Or I'm sure you're going to dig a little bit more into this personality here.
Yeah. We'll get there. And the truth of the matter is, the more you repeat something, the better you become at doing that. And your brain doesn't realize if it's good or bad or helpful or not helpful. Your brain just says, okay, so you're just doing this, so we're just going to we get it. Well, let's just put that into storage, and we're going to just hone that in. That pattern's going to become, okay, by the way, the earliest pattern you learn, or habit, same thing, is the strongest. So that's, I should have started with that. That's a huge deal, right? Because that means when you're a beginner and you just say, I'm just going to figure it out, and you end up with some move that now becomes stuck. Okay, now that's usually when I see people. I see people who have either got 15 years of golfing experience behind them, and then they're like, okay, well, now I'm ready to get better. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to change this, but I can improve upon it. So anyway, so the second thing, and we'll talk more about this, but the second thing I see is a really good athlete, like the D1 college soccer player who then says, oh, I got this. I don't need to take lessons. I'm just going to, I can figure out how I get that ball from point A to point B. And that's an interesting one because sometimes it really works. Like Bubba Watson would be an example, right? Someone who just said, I am an athlete. You know, someone who wasn't overcoached with golf, but maybe they have a ton of eye-hand coordination. They really have good body awareness. And they're like, okay, I can, but I don't really need the guidance, or I don't need to focus on my technique so much. And all I need to do is just see the ball go from here to there. And in the movement world, there are two ways to look at something. You can look at the outcome, so you can see that the ball drew, or you see that the ball went off to the woods. Or you look at the movement. You look at the actual motion that was required to do the action, right? So there's movement and action and outcome. So I think this type of person is only focused on the outcome, and they just have kind of good feel to figure that out. That sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't work.
Right.
And sometimes it becomes really ineffective because their ego gets in the way and they say, wow, I have like a national title behind me. I'm an athlete. Why can't I do this with golf? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll tell you why, because golf is freaking hard. You've got a club that's traveling at 100 miles an hour, and it's like 4 square inches. And if the face is 2 degrees open or 4 degrees closed to your path, you're going to have issues, or there's a lot more complications with this game.
Yeah, it kind of is that whole, this shouldn't be this hard. I'm an athlete. I know how to handle my body and control my body. And I've seen this with a couple of professional athletes that I've either worked with or seen indirectly, and they get super frustrated because I think they have that natural ability to be good enough to move and swing and hit a ball hard and far and things like that. But then all of a sudden you get to that point where you really want to get better and get past that. Maybe they've gotten down to a single digit or high single digit or something like that, but they want to go past that, and it's like they just can't get it, and they get so mad. But that's where this kind of boils down to, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think that type of person needs to, and I'll come back to this, the different sort of concepts here, but that type of person really does need to have some fundamental framework for how to hit certain shots, so that they can associate a feel with, hey, this is why it happened. because this type of person tends to be all feel. But if you don't know why it happened, if you don't know how to hit a draw, if you don't know what the face control feels like, if you don't, then how can you really fix it if it goes wrong? So we'll talk about that later. But the third is this the wanderer. This is the person that just doesn't pay attention to anything either. They're not really a thinker nor an athlete. They're just sort of like, oh, I don't really care so much. I'm just going to hit balls and I'll take it seriously later. Yeah. And that's actually the worst combination because there's no thought and no feel. And it's like, well, I'll just put it off because I don't only feel like it. But that's the person who's in danger of really creating a bad habit. And those are the ones that end up with the real funky swings. So kind of all three of those, by the way, can work out. I mean, I've seen people get down to, the teens in terms of their handicap. They can play 18 holes with these sort of less than ideal perspectives. But as long as you're learning something new or you want to kind of go over this concept and you think you want to get good from the beginning, I don't recommend any of those approaches.
Yeah, it seems like all three of them have their own individual problems. And I could definitely see, and you mentioned it before, being a combination of some of them. I think the athlete and the wanderer tend to kind of mix into my style a little bit, at least especially when I first got into the game. Now I'm starting to learn from many wonderful folks like you, but just having some of the traits of all of these, I'm sure some people can relate to in some respect.
Yeah, I think so, and I'm sure there's more versions of it. But so part of the kind of the nuts and bolts of learning and how our brains and our nervous systems work is, obviously we've got some other stuff that we're doing that kind of plays into things. Some people play tennis, some people don't. Some people play baseball, some people don't. So when you have an early sport, that sport is going to influence whatever you do movement-wise. So we'll call that a bias. Like your bias towards, let's say in tennis, really rotating your torso hard with your hips. I think that was an older style. I think now sometimes you see the pelvis rotate first and then the torso, or you might see a little bit of weight, your weight or your pressure get more into the front foot or the back foot. So that type of experience that you have with another sport tends to carry into golf. So I think sometimes it's important to know that up front when you're learning golf. What are you bringing to the table? What does your landscape look like? Like what kind of, I won't say baggage, but so you're not starting from scratch. You are, and I love it that when the people who are starting from scratch, that's really fun too, though, because then they've got nothing. This is a blank slate.
Right.
So I think that being said, I don't want to give the impression that you have to know exactly what you're doing, because I think there are good players out there that don't necessarily know, but I do think there are some concepts of club dynamics that you just can't avoid. And so the club dynamics, by that I mean, how do you manipulate the golf club? Right? And that's the same with anything, lacrosse or badminton or even your arms in volleyball, like how, or rowing, like how are you moving this implement to create an action? And so the three most important concepts that I go over in the book, and I go over all the time in lessons. I mean, this is the reason I'm writing the book, is because I said it so many times in lessons. I realized, let me just put this in writing.
Yeah, it's way easier that way.
Book. Yeah. So number one would be the club face orientation. So that's the face being open to the target, open to the path, close to the target, close to the path. So relative to where you want the ball to end up, it can use the club face, and that's the part that has all the grooves on it. That can be pointing to the right or to the left, depending on what you want the ball to do. You have to be aware of that. And I think that there are lots of different things you can do to feel those changes and to feel the manipulation. But the way you hold the club has an influence and an impact on that. And then how you kind of manipulate the club going through. So that's number one.
When somebody comes to you, and let's say they are kind of a new beginner, or they're just kind of learning, or they're just finally, realizing that they need to learn some of these club dynamics, and you're teaching club face orientation, obviously you're there and you can show them the club in front of them, but when they're swinging and they're hitting, and it all happens so fast, and say you don't have a piece of technology there or something that they can look at afterwards, how do you go about and help them feel that or understand, what the ball did and what they did in that swing, how that correlates, or what are those interactions? Let's take a second here to thank our sponsor for today's episode, Super Speed Golf. Super Speed has been a huge supporter of the 18 Strong podcast from day one, and as you know, is one of my favorite products, and has probably been the one tool that I brought into my arsenal that has made the quickest changes seen both in myself and in clients when dealing with working on club head speed, distance, and hitting a ball farther. The Super Speed Golf Clubs, if you don't know what they are, it's an overspeed training system that you got to go check out at superspeedgolf.com. In fact, we've been talking about it forever, but it's been catching on like wildfire, and I even retweeted recently a video that the guys from Super Speed shared of Phil Mickelson on the driving range at the Open Championship working on his swing speed protocols before playing in competition. I don't know if it was that day or the day before or when it was, but so the big boys are using it, the juniors are using it. There's people all over the world that are gaining more club head speed because of this simple system. So if you haven't checked it out, go to superspeedgolf.com and use the code 18strong. All right, let's get back to Trillium.
So essentially, the less that's moving, the better when you're trying to learn something new. So sometimes people say start with putting. Well, I think that's fine. I just really don't start with a driver, which is a big, huge swing. But I always guide people into like a chip shot. So a chip shot's a simple, small swing, but you still learn the face and still get a little bit of an idea. So a chip shot would be one of those shots that you just want to go, for those people listening that don't necessarily play golf. You maybe go 10 yards or 20 yards or 30 yards. You're not talking about a big shot, and the ball might make one little hop like a rainbow and then roll a bunch of the way. Or it might just have a big hop and then kind of check up and stop. That's what we're talking about here. So we're also, in terms of size of swing, we're talking about a swing that doesn't go very high, maybe as high as your hip. So the club head itself, if you're next to a dining room table or at a bar, it would be under the bar from the back swing to the forward swing. So these are kind of small motions. You can do this thing without bending your elbows. Maybe the trail of it. The trail is the arm that's not close to the target. So maybe the trail will go full to a little going back. But for the most part, you could do this with fairly straight elbows and fairly straight wrists. So that eliminates extra movement. And then you start to say, okay, so I'm not worried about all that stuff. I don't have to worry about freezing all that stuff. Let's just focus only on hitting the center of the face, making center contact. And then I can look at where the ball traveled after I hit it. So I can feel if it feels like that was a center shot. Where's the best place to bounce on a trampoline?
Right in the middle.
The middle. Yeah, because you bounce the highest, right? It's like, and you get the extra bounce. It feels great. Same thing with golf. So you want to bounce that ball right in the middle. So you'll know if there's no rattling, you'll know you hit the center. You could also spray some, my favorite training thing is this powder spray, the Dr. Scholl's spray.
Mm-hmm. I think it's funny that has become such a staple with golf instructors, the foot powder spray.
Waiting for someone to make a business out of it, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, parents, we are really loving on Dr. Scholl's, but someone else could make a profit.
Somebody out there in the 18 Strong community, please help these golf instructors out.
Come up with it, and I'll buy it by the case from you.
There you go.
So there's So there's that. And then there's the direction of the ball. So then you pay attention to where the ball went. So if you set up with a square face and then you hit it and the ball goes up to the right, you know something wasn't quite right. So that's my best start with the face orientation.
Perfect.
Just kind of pay really close attention to that.
I think that helps out a ton. So less moving parts, focus on the feel,
Mm-hmm.
and then focus on the direction. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yep, totally. Yep. And then the second concept of club dynamic that I think is a little bit more esoteric for people, and that's the club direction, the direction the club's moving. So, okay, first of all, we're talking about the direction the club's moving in the forward swing. Lots of times people say, well, I brought it, more in this direction in the back of it, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the direction the club's traveling right before it hits the ball and through the hit of the ball.
Okay.
So if you put a stick down on the ground, let's say you put a golf club down, you point it towards your target, and you have a tee, and let's say you put the ball on a tee kind of right over the stick so you can see, all right, I want that ball to go in this direction. Anything between your toes and the ball, well, just for ease of concept, we'll call it the inside of that target line, because the club you put down is a line towards the target. So that's the inside of the target line. If you hopped over that to the other side, that would be the outside of the target line. Okay, is that a clear picture?
Yep.
Okay, so as the club head is about to hit the ball, you want it for a basic shot, you want to hit a draw, so you want that club to come from the inside of the target line and then hit the ball.
Okay.
And a huge majority of people come from the outside. So the club, without even realizing it, the club is moving so fast, it approaches from the outside. And that can just be a real tough thing to correct, and that ends up usually producing a slice or a really big divot, or a slice means just a kind of bananas off to the right. And it doesn't produce, solid, consistent, strong, and far shots. So that's the club direction.
Okay. So we most often, for simplicity's sake, we want it coming from the inside as we strike the ball.
Yeah, I think that's a good, if you're learning, I think that's a really great, and usually you teach that to kids or to women or people who have done this fairly slow or club head speed.
Okay.
And then the last one is the angle of approach. That would be the approach also heading into impact. So if the club head is traveling in a downward motion, that would be like an airplane landing. That's a negative angle approach. If it's heading off into the air, that's a positive angle of approach or angle of attack. So if the club is approaching downward, that's usually a good thing. For most clubs, the only club you want it to go upward on, well, there's actually two. One's the putter, but the putter and the driver, those are two bookends. Those are two clubs on the far sides of the bag. So the club that you want to go up would be a driver. You put that ball closer to your left foot or your forward foot. If you're lefty, would be your foot, but forward foot, and that helps with your with solid contact. But with your iron, your ball's more in the middle of your stance. That's probably heading down. So those are my three things that I think people typically don't quite understand well enough. And if they can get that right off the bat, they're going to be set up for a much, much, much faster learning curve.
Yeah, I think that just knowing these things gives you a better understanding of what's happening in that 100 miles an hour. Can you give us a little more explanation of, with the club direction, in to out? You mentioned a lot of the things that happen when you're coming from out to in. What are the good things that happen going from in to out? And are there times when and maybe I shouldn't complicate things, but are there times when you don't want that?
Oh, actually, no, I'm glad you brought that up. Are there times you don't want that? So, okay, good things about hitting, we'll call it a draw. So technically the draw, and I'm just going to assume that everyone's a right-hander. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's good by me because I am. So. It's my show.
Okay, so your show, you're hitting a draw. The target the target's out there. You see a flag way out in the distance. So technically, a draw is when the ball starts off. You hit the ball, the bounces up the face. It starts to the right of the target, and then if you put a little spin axis on it, if the spin axis tilts a little bit to the left, it's gonna turn towards the target, and it's not gonna cross the target line. That's a draw. Starts to the right of the target and curls back in without going left of it. Still stays to the right of the target. That's a draw.
Mm-hmm.
So, even knowing what you're looking at can be helpful. So if that ball crosses over and ends up left of that target, technically that's a hook. You may end up maybe at 2 inches past it. Okay, pretty good. It's going to work on the green. But I think, for those people that really want to think critically about this, your target line, everything's relative to your target line. So a good thing about the draw is it's a shallower swim plane. So you won't necessarily be taking these massive divots.
Mm-hmm.
Divots, when the club's hitting the I think it's a nice way to feel that, like you can not injure yourself with your wrist.
Right.
I just see a lot of people feel like they're going to do some damage to their wrist by taking big divots, and I agree. You look at that and think, okay, you don't swing the club fast enough to really warrant a big, fade where the club comes from the outside. I mean, do people do it? Yeah. Can they make it work? Of course, there's exceptions to everything, but as long as we have our wish list here, I think a draw is a really good option.
So once we start to understand these different dynamics, then how do you take that and start to increase the learning process and keep us from, making some of the mistakes, as we talked about, going from learning this stuff early on and then fast tracking it to becoming a better golfer? What are some of the first steps that we then take?
That's great. And that actually answers your question, which was, or, your comment, which was maybe this is too much and complicated. Well, okay, so you understand that the relationship of the club face to the path is going to affect how the ball spins. So, or where it goes, in other words. So a club face that's slightly closed to the path is going to curve back towards the target. That's going to produce a draw. So you know that. Now, is somebody looking for a perfect swing where it's exactly the same every time? No, of course not. It doesn't exist. But I think when you know the concept, so to answer your question directly, stick with one thing and don't try to get too broad with what you're doing. There's nothing harder than to try to shape shots before you've mastered one.
Right.
And I can think of many examples where people come to me and they've got a little of this, a little of that, a little of this, a little of that, and they're like, okay, I'm trying to put it together in the course, and I don't. It's like, okay, well, you need a bread and butter. You need to have one that's so reliable that you don't have to think about it. Like one that you know is going to hold up on the second or third day of your tournament on the back nine when the match is even. Or you've got a couple shots, but okay, that's an advanced player, right? But so if you're learning for the first time, don't try to hit a fade and don't try to hit a draw. I mean, I think it's really fun and to think about that, and you see people who are doing these cool, like Cameron McCormick was talking about the heart drill that he does with Cameron. He's got low fades, low draws, medium fades, medium draws, high fades, high draws. And if you look at the trace of the ball flight, it makes a heart. So you have these three hearts. That's so cool. Of course, everybody wants to do that.
Right.
Because Jordan's doing it. But the reality is, you're going to be working. Like your feel. And if you haven't established something that's really rote and automatic, you're going to be working yourself kind of spread too thin, and so you're not necessarily going to have an easy time trying to find that one shot when you need it.
Okay, so let me ask you this. right. So you're talking about, kind of grooving one shot and really getting good at one kind of bread and butter shot. But then on the other side of the coin, I think that there's a lot of talk about the benefits of going out and just being creative and having fun and just kind of figuring things out too. And I know that kind of goes into one of the different combinations of players we had earlier. But at what point do we? Well, I guess the better question is, how do we do both? How do we ingrain that bread and butter shot, but also, gain some of that feel and use some of that creativity to just kind of have fun and learn some different things?
Right. That's great. So now we're kind of we're shifting gears into the more intermediate or advanced player. This is more like your core golfer, someone who has been playing, who does have a concept. So, and what you're actually describing is totally important and critical, that someone's got to be able to transfer what they're doing from a range. You can't sit on the range and have one shot and be a little robot. So as soon as you get these concepts and you've absorbed them, you understand them, and you feel like you can do it, and you feel like you can do it fairly consistently, you're ready to move on. You are ready to go and explore and have fun. And that is absolutely important. If you want to be a comprehensive player, we don't play on the range. We play on the golf course, and the golf course has an infinite number of different situations and complications and pressure and all kinds of stuff that you're going to face. And so I think as you are growing and developing, you must be out there and you must be feeling it and you must have a concept of what's going on. I think you have to figure out what that balance is, or have a coach help you figure out what is the ratio of rote repetition, or even, how much range time are you going to put into it, how much you're going to play. You cannot do just playing if you're shooting 85. You have to go back and work on your technique somewhere. You have to. If you're shooting between 65 and 75, you probably need to be a little bit more on the playing side. But you still need to work on your technique. And then someone who doesn't even play 18 holes, going, oh my gosh, you got to be a little more comprehensive with the tools that you're bringing on the course, and that probably means learning some shots. And so the problem with taking someone to the course who's in that early phase is you just don't get to hit that many balls. So you might hit 100 balls, but with one club, you might hit one club 6 times.
Right.
So.
Well, if we could, let me start to jump in here and interrupt you again.
Yeah.
So let's take me for example, because I'll shoot, anywhere from low 80s to low 90s. I play, unfortunately, I don't play much at all. So I've only played a few times this year. Maybe if I start to get out, once every couple of weeks, that's a lot for me. Maybe some time to get to the driving range. What would you suggest for somebody like me in my situation?
I think you need a good warm up. Mm-hmm. I love that this is about your game. Like now we're getting to what you really care about.
Yeah, now we're not talking about in the clouds in the sky. And I think a lot of the people listening can probably relate to just my lifestyle and having family and other responsibilities and not being able to play a lot.
Yeah, and frankly, my husband's the same way. He wants to play better. He broke 80 this week, and it was kind of fun. I mean, he's like a 10, 15 handicap golfer. So went out prior to 77. That's so proud of him. But
nice.
For you, the key really, and I think a lot of listeners out there who do play, will be you've got to at least warm up, and you've got to at least get yourself to a place before you go play where you have the feel for it. The feel is everything. Yeah, I explain these concepts, but that's mostly to the person that just doesn't understand the concept. And I just see an overwhelming number of people that have no idea what the concept is.
Right. Which
is like, maybe that's obvious, but it's sort of shocking. I think most golfers don't necessarily know all this stuff, conceptually. Get the concept, but then be able to feel when you're doing it or not. Feel if the club's coming from the inside. Be able to diagnose it and check those 3 things. You're on the range. Those 3 things are not that many things. Check the face. Start with some half swing shots, slow half swing shots. Get the face down. Make some good divots. then say, okay, am I coming too much from the inside? Am I not coming from the inside? Just check that. Maybe just two things. You check the face, you check the path, make sure that your body is warmed up. You've got your, your hips feeling loose. You've got your shoulders, warmed up. Then you're in a place where you can actually go out there and be an athlete, and you can take your knowledge and you can impart it, in a way that's not so stuck to the thinking. So as much as I just went over all these little nitpicky points about the concept, ultimately the goal is not to have to think about it so much.
Right.
And so my point is with a new player or someone who's trying to change a habit, do your thinking early, front load it, and then you're going to be in a place where you don't have to think because you're going to have a good habit going.
Right. Let me ask you this. Do you have any just a quick drill, especially for, I think, you talked about the face orientation and doing the chip shots. And I think most of us, so I'm going to speak for myself again, tend to come from the outside in. What's a good little drill or a good little warm up before a round or just going out and hitting balls and working on this? A little drill to know whether I am coming from the inside and something that's going to give me a little bit of feedback there.
Great. Okay, I've got two. So number one would be, okay, if you're standing straight up and imagine that you're eye level with the bar. I like using the bar examples, by the way.
Yeah,
so
no.
You're
what is this saying about me?
Or me.
Yeah.
I've never been to a bar. Okay, so you've got a whole bunch of glasses lined up on the bar. Your club shaft, let's say, is resting on the bar. So if you swing back, okay, or we could just use a table full of, I don't know, Thanksgiving table full of food.
Bar's
whatever.
Fine.
So
Bar's fine.
Bar's fine. Yeah. So you bring the club back. So this is like almost like there's a T-ball swing. You're standing straight up and you bring it back, hinge your wrist like you normally would in the golf swing. But when you bring it back, just stop and check to see that the club shaft is still parallel to the ground. You don't want the club shaft starting to angle up towards the clouds. So keep it up parallel to the ground, and then just step into your swing. So you're going to put some pressure in that left foot, and then go really slowly, and check that the face is gonna knock all those glasses off the bar. You're gonna clear all the glasses with the face. So from the backswing, club shaft parallel to the ground to impact, that's the motion. That is exactly what your trail arm or your right arm should be feeling in a golf swing. If you can get that feel, you're going to be really, really happy. Okay, so that's number one. That's clearing the glasses drill. And the next one is to find something that's straight, it's great if you can do it against the wall, or maybe there's the side of the driving range has one of those walls that separates each stall, or you could put your clubs down there or towel, something straight, and then make some swings. And if you're hitting the darn thing, then
that's a bad sign.
Okay, that's fine, right? So make some swings, and then you can even put the ball close to it. The club shouldn't hit that. If you can still make good contact and the ball's really close to it, you're in great shape.
Perfect. Good examples. And then what about the angle of approach? Because I know that I have trouble with this one.
Okay. So believe it or not, the club direction, club path, and the angle of approach, they're kind of cousins. So if you can get it, that's hopefully one affects the other. Now, if you still find that this doesn't help, then let's go to your body. So your upper torso, let's call that from your belt to your shoulders, tilt that a little bit away from the target, just a little bit, and that will help shallow out your path.
Okay.
Especially with the driver. You want to keep your upper center behind the ball, for sure. So we're talking about, the axis of your spine or a spine tilt. Think of it as the right shoulder. Like dipping a little bit to the right, so away from the target. You don't want to be upright when you're hitting the ball. You want to feel like your head is kind of behind the ball a little bit.
Awesome. Are there any apps or pieces of technology that are simple to use that you recommend to some of your players to look at some of this stuff and give us a better idea?
Yeah, well, personally with my students, I use Edufy, which I just love. Have you heard of Edufy?
I use Edufy with all of my clients.
Yeah, I just think it's the best. So I will just drop in video examples. I'll drop in their own, hey, here's you doing it in a perfect way. Like, if I like to use people's own bodies and swings as their own models, because then they can see it. So that's one of the best things. If you're not one of my students, you're not one of my 500 students, then I think it's okay to go on YouTube and to take a look. Find a player that's got a face-on view or a down-the-line view. If you just want to get some concepts, and YouTube has a million. I would stay away from some of the real technical. Okay, go for it if you want. There's a lot of instruction that's out there that comes up, but if you can just find a raw clip of a slow motion swing, you can start to see what I mean. Just start to pinpoint what does the club head look like, or what's their head doing, or what are they doing with their hips? Start to get a sense of what they're doing.
What about something that'll actually give you feedback on what you're doing in your own swing? I know there's all these different swing analyzers and things like that. Is there any one in particular that you use, with an app to the phone or something that people can use when they go to the driving range or whatnot?
There's a lot of stuff out there. I think of, let's see, what is free? And there's a lot of free technology now. I think I use JC Video. I don't know if they have an easy app for that. I'm sure there's. I don't really have a perfect answer. I typically will just use the camera video. So if you have your smartphone, just
right,
put it onto a tripod. It's good to have it in a systematic place. Like you just don't want to have the phone kind of hanging from anywhere. You want to actually be in line with if you're doing a face on, you want to line it up with the leading edge of your club. And if you can have it sort of mid-level, like trunk level, belt level, or chest level, that's good. Because most videos, if you're going to look at a model online, not that that's like the best way to learn, but at least it gives you something to start with that you're going to be comparing apples to apples.
Sure.
And then from the down the line view, anywhere between your toes and your club, or the ball, depending on where. Like I know I always have, I'm with a Jim McLean person, so Jim McLean just had me trained on the target line. And there's a couple reasons for that, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It just means that's the perspective that I always tape from. So typically if you Google someone who's been professionally filmed, they're either going to be from somewhere in the toe, the hand, or the ball line.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Yeah.
Trill, anything else that we missed that we didn't cover in what we wanted to touch on today?
Oh, there's always something, but I can't think of it now.
Well, we'll just have to bring you back on when the book comes out, and touch on another subject maybe.
That'd be fun. We'd love to do it. It's always nice talking to you, Jeff.
You too. Well, first I want to say good luck with everything. What has you excited these days with what's going on in your profession and what's going on up there at Woodmont and everything?
Lots of stuff. There's always fun stuff. So I'm really excited about my body track, which is the pressure mat, and excited about my K vest and my K player. I think both of those devices have been putting out some really interesting ways for us to look a little closer into what people are doing. I don't think it necessarily makes you a better teacher just because you buy it, but I think that you can glean some really interesting information. So, like for instance, we just know that there's not one pressure trace for all swings. People are putting pressure in different spots, but I think if you've got a concept of what foot you're leaning on during, say, the short game. So you're leaning on that front side. That's a good thing. You want to be aware of that. Put a little bit more pressure on your left side. Leave it there for those short shots. For those sort of like under the dining room table swing. So that's quite fun. And then I love the idea of bringing in the K-Play or K-Vest, so this is the 3D system, and I think they've really changed their perspective, or they've really realized that they need the demand and the issue with most people is they can't feel what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So they have the concept, like I've explained this, so like, yeah, okay, I get it, but I can't tell if I'm doing it or not. And so it's really a body-focused concept. So great, so let's set you up in a swing. I want you to feel, let's say you're over-rotating your torso in the backswing. Well, if you're over-rotating, let's set it up so that there's an audible tone. There's a little sound that goes off when you're where you should be. And, oh my gosh, the light bulb goes off. So then they make a swing, they hear that tone, and it's like, oh, I'm not making a full swing. And I take a video, I'm like, that was your swing. Oh, really? Right? So I think that really the next wave is for people to get comfortable with the K-Vest and the K-Player and the 3D stuff, so they've got feedback, like immediate, real feedback when they're practicing.
Yeah, that seems to be one of the hardest things. I'll look at my own swing on film and be like, whoa, that's not what I felt at all, or that's not what I thought I was doing. So having that feedback, and I've been able to experience some of the body track stuff, and we're even kind of playing around, getting ready to play around with some stuff in the gym, just, with different exercises, using the pressure mats and those kinds of things. And it is all this technology, while sometimes it can be overwhelming and can seem very confusing, when you boil it down to some simple things, like you just said, can be very, very helpful. All right, I didn't get a chance to ask you. We asked you most of the original questions from the show, but I didn't get a chance to ask you the last time you were on one of the newer questions that we have, and I didn't even prepare you for this, so you might have to take a second to think about it. But if golf were like baseball or like a boxing match, and you got to pick a song as you walked up to the tee box, what is your song?
Oh my God. My music, let's see. I love, nobody likes my music. I really like, I like electronic, I like kind of house and, electro beats. So my music will probably have no words to it.
Really?
But let's see. How about Ram Jam, Black Betty? That's a good one.
Okay. Yeah.
Whoa, Black Betty. Whoa, Black Betty.
Oh, I love it. If it wasn't a copyright infringement, I would put that in the episode as we taper off. Fantastic.
Yeah, so it's jazz stuff. All right, Jeff, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Trill. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and we're very much looking forward to this book coming out. I can't wait to read it and see the revamped version of the book. I'm sure there's going to be way more than 50 people reading this one.
I hope so. Good. I hope people get better. Great. Awesome. Have a good day.
Thanks. You too, Trill. All right. I want to thank you for joining us again this week on the 18 Strong podcast. If you want any more information on Trillium or want to find out more about this episode, just go to 18strong.com and search for episode number 151 or search for Trillium Rose. You'll find that there's 2 interviews for Trillium. She was on in episode 90 as well as this one, number 151. Both have links to how you can find her, how you can follow her. And if I can get videos of some of the drills that she was sharing, I'll actually put those in the show notes as well, so you can get a better visual, and we'll even share those on social media if we can do that. But by all means, jump over into the Facebook group that we have set up, the 18 Strong Movement, which is a private group just for the listeners of the show, some of the guests that have come on the show, and we can continue the conversation on everything that we talked about, and you'll get insights from some of the other great instructors that are in there, as well as Trillium and any of the other people in the group, what their experiences have been. I want to thank Super Speed Golf and PGA Tour mobile app for once again sponsoring the show and being such great supporters of the 18 Strong podcast. We're very excited to continue to bring you guys great guests, and we couldn't do it without our sponsors and you guys, the listeners. As you know, we've obviously hit over 150 episodes, so that's a huge milestone for us, and we look forward to having many, many more of these celebrations. So once again, thanks to you for helping make all of this happen. All right, we'll catch up with you next week with another great guest. Train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.